Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome back to Diesel Creek. Of course, my name's Matt. We gotta discuss something. I've got a feeling like if I don't get back on...
You're standing in a freezing Pennsylvania mud pit, staring at a massive rusted bulldozer dead for 50 years. You've sunk your life savings into this machine. You're covered in ancient grease, and your wife, Eva, is filming your absolute panic. Welcome to Diesel Creek. Matt Steeder doesn't just rescue abandoned heavy equipment. He bets his entire future on it. When resurrecting forgotten giants, the line between hitting it big and losing everything is razor thin. How did they do it? Spark in the coal dust. Long before the cameras, the sponsors, or the hundreds of thousands of dedicated fans, we have to go back to the rugged, weathered valleys of western Pennsylvania. This region isn't just a place on a map. It is a living, breathing graveyard of America's industrial golden age. It's a landscape defined by rolling hills, dense forests, and the skeletal remains of old coal mines, quarries, and steel mills. For decades, these valleys hummed with the deafening roar of heavy diesel engines, tearing up the earth and building the infrastructure of a nation. But when those industries dried up and moved away, they left behind their tools. Giant bulldozers, massive dragline cranes, and heavy-duty farm tractors were simply left parked in the woods, abandoned to the elements, slowly sinking into the forest floor as decades of autumn leaves and winter snows piled over them. Most kids growing up in this environment looked at these rusting hulks and saw nothing but eyesores, junk, or a background canvas for graffiti. But Matt Steeder was different. Even as a young boy, he looked at these sleeping giants and heard a pulse. Matt wasn't born with a silver spoon, nor did he come from a family of wealthy collectors. What he did have was an insatiable, almost obsessive curiosity about how things worked. While other kids were playing video games or hanging out at the mall, young Matt was in the garage, completely dismantling lawnmowers, dirt bikes, and small engines just to see if he could put them back together and make them run better than before. He was a mechanical outlier in his family, a self-taught wrench turner who possessed a rare, instinctual understanding of mechanical leverage, hydraulics, and internal combustion. He learned early on that, with the right application of heat, force, and patience, even the most stubborn, rusted solid piece of metal could be made to move again. As he grew older, this passion transitioned into a grueling, blue-collar survival strategy. Out of high school, Matt entered the brutal, unforgiving world of pipeline construction, heavy equipment operation, and machine shop labor. If you've never worked on a pipeline in the dead of winter, it's hard to truly grasp the physical toll it takes. You are working 12-hour shifts in freezing mud, handling heavy steel pipe, and operating massive machinery under extreme pressure. There are no warm offices, no easy shortcuts, and no room for excuses. If a machine breaks down on a remote job site, you don't call a tow truck. You fix it yourself, right there in the dirt, with freezing rain dripping down your neck and wind howling through the valley. This high-stress environment became Matt's ultimate proving ground. It was where he forged the raw, practical skills that would later define his channel. He learned the specific language of old-school heavy machinery, how to read the subtle signs of a failing hydraulic pump, how to coax a seized engine loose without cracking the block, and how to safely manipulate tens of thousands of pounds of dead weight with nothing but a come-along winch and some heavy chain. More importantly, working these demanding industrial jobs gave Matt a deep, abiding respect for the engineers and blue-collar workers who built these machines in the mid-20th century. He saw them not as mere tools, but as monuments to American craftsmanship, built to be repaired, not replaced. Yet, as the years rolled on, the grind of the pipeline began to wear on him. He was trading his youth and his physical health for a paycheck, working to build someone else's dream, while his own mechanical passions were relegated to late nights in a cramped, dark home garage. He wanted more than just a 9-to-5 survival story. He wanted to rescue these forgotten machines on his own terms, to tell their stories, and to prove to the world that the old-school way of building things was still worth saving. But how does a blue-collar kid working the pipelines transition from fixing dirty engines to broadcasting his life to the entire world? The genesis of Diesel Creek, the jump from turning wrenches on a freezing pipeline to speaking into a camera lens, wasn't a smooth, calculated business pivot. It was born out of pure, raw frustration and a desperate need for a creative outlet. Back in the late 2010s, Matt's life was a blur of endless shifts, heavy iron, and exhaust fumes. He'd come home exhausted, covered in a mixture of grease and Pennsylvania clay, only to spend his few remaining hours of daylight working on his own project cars and dirt bikes in a cramped, poorly lit garage. He was constantly surrounded by incredible machinery and mind-boggling mechanical challenges that his coworkers and friends got to see, but the rest of the world didn't even know existed. One night, he decided to just press record. At first, there was no master plan. There was no Diesel Creek brand. In fact, if you scroll all the way back to the oldest videos on the channel, you won't find 50-ton bulldozers or epic industrial rescues. Instead, you find shaky, raw footage of dirt bike trail rides, budget repair jobs, and a $200 Jeep Cherokee that probably should have been sent to the scrapyard years ago. Matt was the definition of a one-man crew. He would prop his cheap phone up on a rusty toolbox, hit record, walk into the frame, and start talking while he worked. And for a long time, absolutely nobody watched. If you've never tried to build a YouTube channel from scratch, it is hard to overstate the psychological toll of the zero-view void. You spend 10 hours working in a freezing garage, another 10 hours struggling to edit the footage on a slow, lagging laptop, and then you upload the final product, only for it to sit there with 12 views, half of which are from your own mom and your childhood friends. It takes a unique kind of stubbornness to keep uploading under those conditions. Most people quit after the first month, but Matt had that pipeline work ethic. He knew that if you want to clear a path through a mountain, you don't stop swinging the shovel just because the dirt is heavy. By 2019, Matt made a pivotal decision. If he was going to pour his soul into the secondary gig, he needed to focus on what truly made his heart beat faster. Heavy, forgotten, industrial iron. He officially rebranded the channel to Diesel Creek. The name itself perfectly captured the aesthetic of his life, the raw, mechanical power of diesel engines, clashing with the quiet, overgrown wilderness of the Pennsylvania creeks and hollows. He stopped focusing on cheap commuter cars and started hunting for the giants. He searched Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and local farm auctions for old bulldozers, crawler tractors, and vintage cranes that had been left to rot under pine trees for decades. This shift in content changed everything, but it also brought a massive spike in risk. Buying a broken-down car is one thing. Buying an abandoned 20,000-pound Caterpillar bulldozer is a completely different beast. You can't just call a local flatbed truck to come pick it up. You have to figure out how to haul heavy equipment out of a swamp, load it onto a trailer without the brakes failing, and transport it down steep, winding mountain roads, all on a shoestring budget. A single mistake during a recovery operation doesn't just mean a ruined project. It can mean a catastrophic highway accident, thousands of dollars in fines, or a heavy piece of steel crushing you into the dirt. Every single project was a massive financial gamble. Matt was pouring his hard-earned pipeline paychecks directly into buying these massive, non-running machines, paying for heavy-duty towing, and purchasing specialized, expensive replacement parts. He was operating on a razor-thin margin. There were moments when he had to choose between buying a critical fuel pump for a project or buying groceries for the week. The pressure was suffocating, and the physical toll was starting to show. He was working his grueling day job, running the channel, recovering heavy equipment on the weekends, and editing late into the night. He was running on fumes, pushing his mind and body to the absolute limit. He was standing on the edge of a cliff, trying to build an empire out of the mud. But the weight of doing it all alone was starting to drag him down. Yet, no man can build an empire entirely alone in the mud, and that is where Eva enters the frame. Partner in the grease. The role of Eva, the cold hard truth about building an independent media empire, is that behind every successful solo creator is a massive amount of unseen, exhausting labor. For a long time, Matt was burning the candle at both ends, filming with one muddy hand, holding a wrench with the other, and editing until his eyes bled in the early hours of the morning. But a true turning point came when his partner, Eva, stepped fully into the frame. If you think marrying a YouTuber is all red carpets and free gear, the reality of Diesel Creek will give you a harsh wake-up call. When Matt and Eva tied the knot, she didn't just marry a man. She married a lifestyle defined by heavy steel, freezing outdoor shoots, and the constant smell of diesel fuel. Eva quickly became the unsung hero of the channel, transforming what was once a chaotic one-man hobby into a polished, highly efficient business. Imagine standing in a desolate, wind-swept clearing in the dead of winter. It's 20 degrees. The ground has turned into a soup of frozen mud and motor oil, and you've been trying to free a seized engine piston for 6 hours. Your hands are numb, your tools keep slipping, and the sun is rapidly setting. That is where Eva shined. She wasn't just standing by as a spectator. She was holding the camera steady in freezing rain, setting up the lighting, managing the batteries, and capturing the crucial close-ups of every bolt turn. She learned how to anticipate Matt's movements, capturing the raw frustration of a snap bolt or the pure, unfiltered joy of a 50-year-old engine puffing its first cloud of black smoke. But her impact off camera was arguably even bigger. As Diesel C. Reek rapidly expanded, the administrative weight of the channel grew heavy enough to crush any creative spark. There were complex sponsor contracts to negotiate, mountains of fan emails to answer, a rapidly growing merchandise store to manage, and the sheer logistical nightmare of shipping massive, heavy machine parts across the country. Eva took the wheel of the business side, freeing Matt up to do what he does best, bring dead machines back to life. She brought structure to the chaos, acting as the stabilizing force when the stress of the algorithm got too heavy to bear. The couple's dynamic on and off screen resonated deeply with viewers. It wasn't a fake, overproduced reality show. It was a real, hard-working partnership. In an era where most social media couples present a highly curated, perfect version of their lives, Matt and Eva showed the grimy, exhausting reality of building a dream from the ground up. They shared the wins, but they also didn't hide the failures, like when a recovery operation failed spectacularly or when a costly machine turned out to be a complete bust. Then came their biggest project yet, welcoming their son, Leo, into the world. Suddenly, the stakes of the gamble skyrocketed. It was no longer just about Matt and Eva chasing an adventurous, blue-collar dream in their spare time. Every dollar spent on an old bulldozer at an auction was now a dollar that had to justify itself to their growing family. The pressure to consistently produce high-performing, weekly long-form content became immense. The demanding schedule of editing, filming, and heavy labor had to be carefully balanced with the sleepless nights of raising a newborn. It was a delicate high-wire act, but instead of pulling back, the duo decided to double down. They realized that if they wanted to build a truly generational legacy, something they could eventually pass down to Leo, they had to scale the operation. They needed to move beyond temporary setups and backyard mechanics. They needed to dream bigger, build stronger, and create physical monuments to their hard work. As their family grew, so did the scale of Matt's ambition, pushing him from rescuing old machines to rescuing entire pieces of local history. The monuments of mud, the dream shop and the church. The monuments of mud, the dream shop and the church. To survive in the world of heavy machinery restoration, you have to outgrow the mud. For years, Matt's biggest enemy wasn't a stubborn engine block or a seized hydraulic cylinder. It was the weather. Working on a 30-ton machine out in the open Pennsylvania elements is a special kind of misery. In the winter, the metal is so cold it burns your bare skin, and grease thickens to the consistency of peanut butter. In the summer, the relentless humidity turns a simple afternoon of wrenching into a suffocating battle against rust and exhaustion. If a sudden thunderstorm rolls in over the hills, you have to scramble to throw tarps over open engine blocks, praying that water doesn't seep into the cylinders and ruin months of hard work. Matt knew that if Diesel Creek was going to survive long-term, he needed a fortress. He needed a workspace that matched the sheer scale of his ambitions. Thus began the saga of the Dream Shop. This wasn't just a simple metal pole barn you could order from a catalog and throw up in a weekend. Matt designed this structure to be an industrial-grade sanctuary. He needed floors thick enough to support the massive, concentrated weight of crawler tractors and bulldozers without cracking. He needed ceilings high enough to lift heavy engines straight out of their bays, and electrical systems robust enough to power commercial-grade welders, plasma cutters, and air compressors all at once. The construction of the Dream Shop became a multi-year epic of sheer physical labor and financial anxiety. Matt did a massive portion of the work himself, transforming the build into a core storyline for the channel. Viewers watched him operate excavators to level the rugged Pennsylvania clay, coordinate massive concrete pours, and erect the towering steel framework. But the crown jewel of the shop was the installation of the heavy-duty overhead bridge crane. In the heavy equipment world, a bridge crane is the ultimate game changer. It turns a dangerous, back-breaking three-man lifting job into a precise, push-button operation. But retrofitting a massive, industrial steel crane into a custom shop is a logistical nightmare. Every beam has to be perfectly aligned, every weld must be structurally flawless, and the support columns must be anchored deep into the concrete to prevent a catastrophic structural collapse. When the crane was finally hoisted into place and wired up, it wasn't just a win for the channel. It was a physical monument to how far Matt had come from his days of turning wrenches on a pipeline. He finally had a professional sanctuary where he could work through the bitter Pennsylvania winters in relative comfort, turning out high-quality restorations at a pace he had never managed before. Yet, just as the dream shop was nearing completion, Matt's eyes wandered to an even bigger, more unconventional project. In a nearby town sat an abandoned historic church. It was a beautiful, weathered brick structure that had once been the beating heart of its local community, but it had fallen into a state of tragic disrepair. The roof was leaking, the foundation was shifting under the weight of decades of neglect, and local authorities were eyeing it for demolition. Most developers looked at the building and saw a massive liability, a money pit that would bankrupt anyone foolish enough to touch it. But Matt didn't see a liability. He saw a soul worth saving. He purchased the historic church with a bold, high-stakes vision. He wanted to personally rescue the building from the brink of collapse, stabilize its historic architecture, and convert the interior into high-quality rental apartments. It was an incredibly risky gamble that pushed him far outside his mechanical comfort zone. Restoring a bulldozer is about clearances, pressures, and combustion. Restoring an old church is a battle against rot, gravity, and shifting earth. The structural work alone was terrifying. In some of the channel's most tense episodes, Matt had to dig out crumbling foundation walls, install massive steel I-beams to shore up sagging joists, and work high in the air to patch holes in the towering roof. One wrong move with a jack or a heavy excavator could have sent the historic brick walls cascading down, destroying the building and wiping out his investment in an instant. But Matt's unique blend of heavy machinery expertise and stubborn blue-collar work ethic kept the project moving forward. He used his own fleet of vintage excavators and dump trucks to handle the heavy earth moving, saving tens of thousands of dollars in contractor fees while documenting every grueling step for his audience. For Matt and Eva, these two projects, the dream shop and the church, represented a major shift in their lives. They were no longer just content creators chasing views from video to video. They were builders, property owners, and preservationists, physically reshaping their local community with their own hands. But with hundreds of thousands of dollars poured into concrete, steel, and old iron, a burning question remained. Was the gamble actually paying off? The shadow economy of the Rust Belt. The shadow economy of the Rust Belt. Let's look at the hidden ecosystem they are actively building. One that goes far beyond traditional YouTube ad revenue or simple property flips. They are tapping into what can only be described as the shadow economy of the Rust Belt. Across the decaying industrial landscapes of the American Northeast, there is a massive, highly specialized network of independent landowners, scrapyards, estate liquidators, and old-school mechanics. This is a quiet, word-of-mouth economy where handshakes still carry weight, and the most valuable currency isn't digital currency or stock options, but rather insider knowledge and access. For decades, this subculture operated entirely in the dark, hidden away in rural barns and gated gravel yards. But by bringing a high-definition camera into this secret world, Matt has essentially become the digital bridge, connecting these isolated pockets of old-school heavy machinery. He has built a unique, trust-based network where people don't just sell him machines for the money. They practically gift them to him because they know Diesel Creek is the only place where their grandfather's beloved, rusted-out tractor will actually get a second chance at life instead of being melted down into cheap steel rebar. This position as a regional mechanical liaison has unlocked a completely fresh avenue of growth, high-stakes sourcing, and industrial salvage consulting. Today, companies and estate executors actively reach out to Matt to help them figure out what to do with decades of accumulated industrial clutter. When an old quarry closes down, or a 70-year-old contractor passes away leaving behind a yard packed with heavy cranes and parts, Matt is often the first phone call. He has transitioned from a simple buyer of old machines into a vital curator of industrial liquidation. This role allows him to cherry-pick the absolute rarest, most valuable components, engines, and attachments before they ever hit the public market. By operating at this intersection of media, history, and heavy industrial salvage, Matt and Eva are proving that junk is entirely subjective. They have mastered a specialized form of arbitrage, taking heavy assets that are massive, expensive liability to a corporate entity, using their personal labor and platform to erase that liability, and turning those very same machines into highly valuable digital content and physical property assets. This isn't just restoration anymore. It is a highly sophisticated, blue-collar recycling loop that breathes financial vitality back into stagnant, post-industrial towns. It is a brilliant blueprint for how the modern creator economy can actively revitalize dying physical industries, proving that the digital future doesn't have to replace our industrial past. It can actually save it. The future of the creek. The long-term vision for Diesel Creek stretches far beyond the daily grind of the YouTube upload schedule. For Matt and Eva, the ultimate goal has never been about chasing temporary internet fame, accumulating vanity metrics, or riding the unpredictable waves of digital trends. They understand a fundamental truth that many modern creators learn the hard way. The internet is a volatile, shifting landscape, but land, steel, and community are forever. Their eyes are fixed firmly on a horizon that extends decades into the future, aiming to build a sustainable, generational legacy, a physical and philosophical foundation that will stand long after the camera batteries fade, the social media algorithm,